Now, how about that? But as we go through these times, and we go through these times that are meant for our growth, know that they're meant for a purpose. They're meant for a purpose. All the things that we go through, they help cultivate and produce other things in us like patience. Like this verse says. Me personally, my lack of patience has a lot to do with my responses to other people and to certain situations. And I'm sure I'm not alone in that. That's probably a common response. And this helps contribute to my inconsistencies. See, not only if I am inconsistent, other people see my inconsistencies as well as I do. Other people are going to see that. And we've all heard the verse in 1 Corinthians 13:4, the love is patient. Love is kind verse. And if we're talking about being patient, I'm going to talk about how we respond if we're impatient with people we love. See, if love is patient and love is kind, if I'm impatient with my family, am I loving them in the right way? You have to look at yourself, because this stuff is really going to start to hit home. Because if I'm impatient, see, the people that I'm most impatient with are the people that I say that I love the most. See, well, there's a different kind of love that we're supposed to show if you're a Christian. This is not a conditional thing, and I have to be consistent in the way I love them. We have to be consistent in the way that other people can see us when we go through these hard times. So what does this have to do with the uncommon response when we're talking about being our patience and how we love people in a patient way? Well, let me ask you a few questions. How do you respond when the restaurant messes your order up for the third time? How do you respond when you're in a hurry and you get stuck behind a slow driver? How do you respond when you're trying to make it to church on time and your wife won't walk out the door? How do you respond? How do you respond when you're at Walmart and there's not enough cashiers? Probably a lot like me. Not very loving. Not very patient. These are real life situations. These are situations that take place outside the church. These are situations that we live out in front of people who are used to common responses. People should see something. See, we're different. We're supposed to be a peculiar people, not common responses. We're not supposed to just blend in with the crowd. Well, the crowd is supposed to mix up. The atmosphere should change when we walk in. This should be a completely uncommon thing when one of us walk into a building. But so many times we just blend in with our surroundings. See, we are supposed to be set apart and sanctified, a people that others see our works and glorify Him. That's what this is all about. People seeing our works and glorifying Him. So why do I still struggle with this? I'm not the only one. Thank you, Trish. Thankfully, we have a God that does not want us to stay the same. He does not want us to be the same as what we were, and He gives us remedies for our ignorance and arrogance. And I believe James gives us a real insight to some things here that we need to see, because as I began to read these verses, it became very obvious. These are very common scriptures. Most people could quote the majority of that. But it became obvious to me that my faith is very weak because of the way that I respond and how inconsistent I am in these situations. See, it says our faith is tried through trials, and that produces patience. See, my problem is that I don't face trials with faith. When I see a trial come, my response is probably a common response, and I look for a way out immediately. I'm not letting patience have her perfect work. My perspective has always been that God should take these storms away, and He said, you're going through these things so I can change your perspective. We have to have a perspective change, and a common response to an incoming storm, for me, is to ask God to take it away or to start looking for a way out. That's a common response, I believe. And as we look into James, and he gives us some insight to how we should respond to these things. And as I've already read these, it says we are told to know that storms are coming. Trials and temptations, hard times, they're coming. We know that they produce something in us that's for our good. We're told to know this. We're told to ask God for wisdom to get through it. To get through it. Not to get out of it, but to get through it. 4, we are told not to doubt. And then 5thly, we're told to do all this with joy. So we have to ask God for the wisdom to not only get through the storms, but to also to gain experience and maturity to walk further into what God has for us. There's a purpose through the storms, but we must ask in faith, nothing wavering, no doubt whatsoever. This is a hard place to get to, because a lot of times it says that we have to ask for wisdom, but so many times we think of ourselves as a mighty big man. Like we're able to overcome these and get through these things ourselves. And I've thought of myself like that for a long time, Troy. Thought of myself like that for a long time. But praying a prayer without faith is like trying to take a drink from an empty cup. You can throw it up all you want to and you ain't getting nothing out of it, Gabe. And that's what we do so many times. If you pray, get this. When you pray with doubt in your heart, you're saying one of two things. You're either saying God can't, or you're saying God won't. If you say that God can't, then you're questioning His sovereignty and His power. If you say that God won't, then you're questioning His grace, His love, His mercy that He's offered towards you. So you have to really check yourself in this. And if you're questioning these things, then you also question your worth. You're questioning the cross. You're questioning the resurrection. And you're ultimately questioning your salvation. If you do not understand His sovereignty and His power and His grace and His love and His mercy that it's offered and extended to you, then you're going to keep fighting these battles yourself. You're going to keep fighting these storms yourself. This is all about stability and consistency. See, if you keep stumbling and falling and running every time you see a storm come, that's probably a telltale sign that you're relying upon yourself. I've been there. I've been there. You've probably seen me running away too. Verse 6 says you're like a wave driven by the wind and tossed. I've read this verse and read that verse and read that verse. Never really made sense to me. I've thought about that verse for weeks, trying to figure out what this verse even means. A wave is at the mercy of the surroundings. A wave is caused by wind. A wave is caused by friction upon the surface of the water. In this illustration, we're the water in this illustration, and what would cause the friction would be doubt. Because we're told to pray, and to pray without any doubt here, for the wisdom to overcome these things. See, if friction is caused when two opposing forces meet, like the flesh and the spirit, like fear and faith. If you wrestle with those things, if you're back and forth constantly between what the flesh wants and what the Word says, if you're constantly afraid every time a storm comes, but you know that you should be standing, and you run anyway, you're unstable in all your ways, and you're double-minded. And all the prayers that you offer up, it says, don't think you're going to receive anything from the Lord. This is about stability and consistency. The word consistency, and this is about being consistent no matter the situation. This is an uncommon response to be able to stand and to be able to look at an oncoming storm and say, God, I trust you in it. I trust you through it, not just to remove it. If I have to go through this, I trust you. And each and every person in here has already had storms in your life you've gone through. And now you can look back and you can say that I know that He brought me through it. I know that I came through that because of Him. No matter how mad you were at the beginning that you were facing it. No matter how hurt you were that you were going through it. You can look back now and say, He brought me through that. My goodness, what a God we have. He is consistent, church, even when we're not. He is consistent, but you have to hold on to Him. The word consistent means to be in harmony, a steady continuity, free from variation or contradiction. The word continuity is an uninterrupted connection. Doubt and fear break the connection between us and God. Matthew chapter 14, verse 22 through 33. This is where Jesus walks on the water. He goes up on the mountain to pray as He sends the disciples across the other side, and they begin to row, and it says that the winds were contrary. Well, let me read verse 24. It says, Now the ship was in the midst of the sea, tossed with waves, for the wind was contrary. It was contrary to them. It was contrary to them. Notice that it didn't say, if the wind is blowing one way, would it not be easier to say, I don't want to go through this storm. I'm just going to quit paddling and let what's contrary to me just take me wherever it wants. It would blow them right back where they came from. It would blow them right back where they came from, and it would have been easier to say, I'm going to go back. I'm just going to go back. I don't want to continue on in the storm. I'm going to get out of it. But He saw them in the midst of their storm. And notice that He is completely unaffected by whatever is contrary to us. That's where their consistency comes from. And when we can hold on to Him and we can be a partaker of His divine nature, then that consistency can be seen in us as we walk through these storms. In Mark chapter 4, 35 to 41, this is where they're in the boat. And the storm comes, and He's asleep down in the bottom. In verse 37, it says, And there arose a great storm of wind, and the waves beat into the ship, so that it was now full. If you get down to verse 39, it says, Jesus arose. He rebuked the wind and the sea, and said, Peace, be still. As they saw Him walking on the water towards them, they were afraid, and He told them that they could be still too. But notice in one, He speaks to the storm, and He tells the storm to be still. In the other, He don't. But He shows them He shows them how they can still be consistent, hold on to Him through the storm. There's been storms in my life, man. I've seen stuff coming that I've prayed about, and I've asked God to remove that situation, and He has. He has. He's took those storms, and in the storms that I saw coming, I've asked Him, and He's answered, and He's told that storm to be still. And then there's been times that I've faced storms, and I didn't know how to get through them, and I've prayed that prayer, and He told me to be still, to go through the storm. This is how we're consistent. People's going to see it. We have to be consistent, and not in ourselves and relying on our own power. But there's people here tonight going through storms and battles that we don't even know. We had a Bible study at Sherry's last night, and the Lord just moved. The Lord moved, and people began to open up and was vulnerable. That's an important thing. There were people fighting battles that we didn't know that they were fighting. And I'm sure there's people here fighting battles that nobody knows you're fighting. There's people here that have been through storms, or you see a storm on the horizon, and you don't know how to respond and asking Him for wisdom to get through it, not out of it. Know that this is meant for your good. And Romans 8:28 says that all things work together for the good for those who love God and are called according to His purpose. You were called according to His purpose. This blows my mind about that verse. It says that all things work together. So even in the times where I am inconsistent, even in the times where I have messed up, knowingly went against what I know was right, get a hold of this. Somehow through our God's sovereignty and power and His love and grace and mercy towards me, He was able to take that and rearrange my destiny. like the song says. There's other people whose needed destinies rearranged, and I'm getting ready. I'm getting ready to get out of the way. I'm getting ready to close. But the thing that needs to be that we got to get is being consistent through storms. This is not only for yourself. See, when those waves come crashing down, they not only are affected themselves by the wind, but when they allow themselves to be tossed to and fro, that also begins to affect their surroundings. Our stability, my stability, and consistency as a Christian has a great impact upon my family. People need to see us consistent, even in the middle of storms. People need to see that, and we need that. 1 Peter chapter 1. I'm going to read this, and I'll turn it over to our pastor. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, which according to his abundant mercy hath begotten us again unto a lively hope by the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, to an inheritance incorruptible and undefiled, and that fadeth not away, reserved in heaven for you, who are kept by the power of God through faith unto salvation, ready to be revealed in the last time, wherein ye greatly rejoice, though now for a season, if need be, you are in heaviness through manifold temptations. Know this, that the trial of your faith, being much more precious than that of gold that perisheth, though it be tried with fire, might be found unto praise and honor and glory at the appearing of Jesus Christ. There's a purpose. There's a purpose for the storms that you face, through the trials that you go through. There's a purpose for it. Trust Him through it and know that it's meant to ultimately give Him glory. That's what it's all about. Turn over to our pastor.
You know,